along with Anne Marie today. And we're so excited to be here, to be of service to you, to help you through challenges, celebrate triumphs, and just really be together and let it flow the way it should flow. With that said, chat's open. We'd love to have you direct the conversation because it's easier for us to address relevancy than presume something. And with that, I'll turn it over to Anne. And Anne, this is your second time as a guest host. So what do you think about the show and what we're involved in and, all of that?
Oh, I think it's awesome. And I think it's a great opportunity to come together and have those, like I used to form think tanks in the work that I did. And it's a way to broaden your think tank, right? We are allowed to have people from all over the globe bring in their perspectives and experiences and understandings and just learn and grow from each other. And it's such an honor to be able to do that. I was thinking about International Women's Day today, right? And
I saw your post, by the way.
Oh, okay, yeah. I've actually done a couple already. I was asked. I am fortunate to work with this startup university, and I teach master's in business administration for organizational behavior studies, and then also organizational leadership. And so they had asked me last week to put a little clip together for Women's Day. And at the time, you all know, I was really sick. I had bad sinus allergy going on. And so I said I promised that I would do it, but I didn't know if it would make it prior to or the day of. So I did a little trial run this morning, just pulling some thoughts together around how incredible it is to get to be mentored by some amazing women and also mentor some women. And so I threw the video together in a very raw way, because that's what I do. If you catch me not thinking, not smiling at a moment, it's because I'm thinking internally or whatnot. That's me. So it was a great way to start my morning and honor their request. I still have to send it over to the university, but I sent a raw take of it to my LinkedIn feed because I like to share with all my peeps where I'm at. And it really got me thinking, who are the women in our lives that have had great impact? And for me, there's as many women in my day-to-day as there are that I can think of historically that have done some incredible things. And it's really special to get to reflect on all the things that they've done to help me be the person that I am, and the selflessness that has been given with that. So I'll ask you, Don, who's a woman in your life that really stands out and had great impact?
Well, that's a great question. Alex is here. I'll just mention him real quick, and then I'll address that.
Yeah.
Basically, I've been very fortunate to have a lot of strong women in my life. My grandmother, who helped raise me, was very significant. And there's something about grandparents who have the patience and the intent to be and share and pass on things to you that may help you when they're not going to be around. I had a very strong, independent mother who was very, very capable. I never had to ever worry about her in any interaction. And then I had a sister. So I really just raised with all these women. And then my wife, who we're going to be married 45 years. And then my daughter, who's just a pride and joy in what she's able to accomplish. And then a granddaughter, who's just beautiful and wonderful in all ways. So when you have from top to bottom, and they've all been great, positive people and experiences, you carry them with you.
Yeah.
I remember when I had to say goodbye to my grandmother when she was 97, and I didn't know how, because I knew it was it. And I couldn't lie and say everything's good, we'll see each other next week.
Right.
And I couldn't be too realistic and say it's over, thanks for the memories. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I ultimately came up with that, she was such a big part of me that wherever I went, she would go. Whatever I see, she would see. And so we'd still be together. And I think that's, to your point, if you make it a practice of reflection of people that were essential or important to you, and take a time to acknowledge them,
Mm-hmm.
and be with them, even if it's for a few minutes looking at a picture. It'll bring back warmer memories. It'll bring back feelings that you didn't remember, and it'll make them come alive for themselves and you. And then you honor them. Christine said, how's that answer, by the way?
Yeah, that's awesome. And I was actually reading Christine's post while you were speaking, and I was making some connections. So Christine talked about how her aunt stood out for her, and she was a shy kid, and she saw her and loved her up and boosted her confidence. And so that's what my grandmother was for me.
Mm,
I was the youngest of five, and she saw me. Don, you shared the last time I was on, I think it was about, or it might have been in between, about blueberries.
mm,
And I said I have a story behind blueberries. Well, blueberries was essentially my first word that I spoke, which is strange, but I didn't speak until later, much later than most kids would developmentally, because I had four siblings that spoke for me. I
mhm,
didn't have to. Everything was just handed to me by a grunt or a point. And my grandmother wouldn't have it anymore.
mhm,
And we would pick wild blueberries in Wisconsin. And I loved having them with milk and a little bit of sugar just in a bowl. And I wanted blueberries. And she wouldn't give them to me because I wouldn't ask for them. And so I woke up in the middle of the night and yelled out blueberries. And my grandmother got up in the middle of the night and took me to the table. And I remember it because I remember like how grand the table was and how dark the room was and how I was sitting there having those blueberries with my grandmother who took the time to build my confidence, like Christine said, to see me and have no more of my invisibility in the world. She was an incredible role model, absolutely incredible role model from the moment that I was born. And um, I feel so fortunate to have had her influence in my life. She had a fourth grade education.
mhm,
She came from a huge family, had a fourth grade education, had a very rough life. And she was just the most wise, knowledgeable person that, one of the many that I hold the highest, like just incredible. And so, like, it's interesting being at this point now in my life because we've lost her. We lost her when she was in her mid 90s, but we were able to have my grandmother, my mother, and my daughter all together and had very strong relationships and built each other up. And it wasn't always that way with my mom. Um, I was the youngest of five, so she had a lot to deal with and handle. So it took our adult life till I became an adult for her and I to really form a strong relationship. And now I consider her one of my best friends. And same with my daughter. We're very strong. And now my daughter has two little girls. So I know what you're saying when you say you see it in the little ones, all the way from the youngest to the oldest in the span, this incredible opportunity to not only mentor them and teach them, but continue to learn from them. I learn things from my granddaughter every day. And now she's going to be 4 on Saturday. So early happy birthday to Eiley. And then the youngest is going to 8 months now, and she's starting to form that personality. And it just fuels me. It
mhm,
helps me really see life in a different way and maybe lighten up about some things that I might be a little more tense about without her. But that multi-generation is huge. I think it's so important. And I I would love to hear from people that are joining us now in regards to like women that have stood out to them in their lives and had impact on them. Because I do know in conversation with others that not everyone has a mom like
Mhm.
my mom. Not everybody has that relationship. And they've found, and other women have found them and come alongside them. And everybody has a different story in relation to the women in their lives and how that's all come about. And I just think today is a great day to be able to acknowledge all of that, right?
Absolutely, and I'm very impressed with your story and with your grandmother. And the grandmothers keep coming up because I forget who it was last week. And it didn't take much for someone's grandmother to show up. And what's so cool is everybody got to meet that grandmother,
Mhm.
right? So you expanded someone's circle, even though physically they may not be here, but
Mhm.
their legacy lives on through the people they touched. And
Mhm.
the other point that you made, I think that's significant, is education and intelligence don't always match up,
Mhm.
right? Because, there's self education, there's formal education, there's a combination of the two. But someone's innate intelligence and ability to learn and process and create actually gets enhanced when you have to figure it out for yourself,
Mhm.
when you have to be self-directed. Mario had a story of his dad coming out of a concentration camp, never had a day of education.
Mhm.
He finally emigrated to Argentina. Best he could do was a bicycle mechanic, but he never stopped reading, watching, learning, and eventually he grew up and became the primary distributor for International Harvester down there, and was hugely successful. So where you start is not as important as where you go from where you start, and who you go with and how you go. And the other thing is, when you learn on your own, you learn faster and it lasts longer because you pay a heavier price and you're
Mhm.
kind of excluded until you get there. Dennis has some funny things, supposedly. Good morning. Women really are great workers now because many of them know the real meaning of labor. Here's another one. Your grandmother sounds very good. Uh, and that's so cool. And you know what it showed about your grandmother waking you up or coming with you in the middle of the night
Yeah.
is she was waiting for that signal.
Mhm.
It wasn't by accident because grandparents being one, you're always thinking with them, around them, for them. So when you get the opportunity to spend time with them, and I know what you mean, because there's still a level of innocence there.
Right.
There's still a level of untarnished originality and uniqueness. And I always preferred to see life through their eyes and share my life through my eyes to them,
Mhm.
right? Because they're in a much better place without all the chaos, the noise. And, that's how you can learn. I mean, I know more about Pokemon than I ever want to know now,
Paw
because
Patrol. Yeah. I hear you.
used to be Thomas the Train Guy, and
Yes.
you go through all these cycles. Christine says, with my twin daughters, I'm closer with one than the other. My relationship with Elizabeth is easier and more natural than it is with Sabrina. I notice I have even taken more pics and videos of Elizabeth. I need to be aware of this and take more steps. Well, what's your thoughts, Anne?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that, Christine, because I actually don't have any pictures from when I was an infant. I have very few from when I was a toddler, just like a couple in the backdrop kind of thing. And then, those family pictures started more when I was a toddler, where they would line all the kids up on the fireplace ledge. And so we have a couple of
Mhm.
those. But my mom had her hands full. She had her hands full with 5, and, so it's really special to get to, see the photos and the growth of my own grandchildren that, because we have so much more available now too. Um, I can stay, Christina, like, I have my daughter's older, I have a daughter and a son. I I have more photos and more videos of my daughter, not because she's older and she's had more years, but it was something about the needs of my son were very different at that age. And my pediatrician at the time, he wasn't able to deliver my children because I had high risk pregnancies. But he delivered me, and he was my neighbor as I was growing up having my own kids. And he told me one day when I was in getting my throat checked, and my daughter was sitting in the corner organizing coins by the numbers on them, because that's the kinds of things she did. And my son was running around in circles, and he had unbibbed overalls. And my doctor like picked him up and hung him from the coat hook on the wall so that he would be still long enough for him to be able to look in my throat. Right. And so his needs were way different. So I don't have as many photographs as him, because it was a matter of taking the pictures or like keeping him safe from what he was going to get into next. And he just had that curious, inquisitive mind. But my doctor said to me at that point, he said, one day they're going to flip roles, and your daughter, she's going to have more needs than and you're gonna see it, and you're gonna experience it, and he's gonna be this like incredibly like independent man. And we're getting there right now. Like, it's been a transition, and it's really nice to be able to have that experience with them and influence. And I raised him as a single mom. And so some things that come out of his mouth, I'm like, how did that ever become a part of you? Like, you were raised with strong women around you. But for his ability to become a leader in his field, and be independent and be married and have his dreams and hopes and desires, um, and not need me in the ways that he was needing me, but changing that relationship, having it evolve. And then the same thing with my daughter, having our relationship evolve in a different way where she now does need me more. And that's okay, because it's great to be able to be in their lives. And that's a part of that work-life balance, right? Is making sure that you're not missing out on all of that, and that you have the opportunity to just take it all in and take a breath on it, and know that how fortunate how fortunate am I to have children that want me in their lives, and to be able to recognize and experience that growth with them. Um so it is, the personalities and how they develop along the way is really quite special. And we have done we have 4 little girls under the age of, it will be 6. We have, one being, my niece has 2 little girls. I shared before that I lost a sister a year and a half ago, and she was 18 months older than me, and our kids really grew up close together. And so her daughter has 2 little girls, one that will be 6 on March 11th, and then another one that will be 5 in July. And then I have Eiley, who will be 4 on March 11th, and then Blakelyn, who is 8 months. And so watching just like that span in the same room when they're all together, or when we go over to Disney World, or when we go to the park, watching them develop their leadership skills and their capacities to support each other and challenge each other across those age ranges is just such a gift.
Mm-hmm.
A real incredible gift. So I see some notes in the chat about the difference of our children being more independent and a little bit more needy or clingy, um, and what that does to us when we're trying to raise them. Are we allowing the clinging too much, or are we are we pushing them too much? And I think we do the best we can with what we have in that time frame. My mom, I grew up with my mom sharing, and she doesn't mind me sharing this because we've had great conversations about it and we're very close now. But I grew up with my mom telling me that when she found out she was pregnant with me, she wanted to end her life that whole first trimester. She was beside herself. She knew her capacity and she felt like she just didn't have it in her. And and that was tough to swallow when you're a kid growing up hearing that, right? And then being able to have that conversation with her just changed our world and my respect for everything that she did for us as kids. Um, and then I look at women who are in the workforce and managing the home and their children while managing corporations or in entrepreneurships, and just the capacity and the resiliency and the ability to lift others up at home and in the workplace is an incredible talent. And I'm glad that it's received more of a presence in society as being a positive thing.
Well, that is so valuable, and I encourage everybody out there who has a story that
Mhm.
they can relate to and believe that it could have value for other people. One thing I learned about raising kids is that they're all their own person to begin with. And too many people want their kids to be like them or are frustrated when they're not liking the same things, doing the same things, acting the
Right.
same way. And once you bless somebody's difference, you allow them to grow, because what I learned is it's easier to learn when you're younger because it means more and it also lasts longer.
Right.
People have been pampered and entitled. When they get off on their own, they're helpless, right? But
Right.
people who were allowed to fall, allowed to learn by their doing, not by someone telling them, and the encouragement by the modeling you do.
Mhm.
People are looking at you all the time when you're looking at them, especially kids.
Mhm.
They're saying, well, if she can do it, I should be able to do it, right? Or how can you say, do what I say and not what I do? And
Right.
that's why even in our house, when I decided the TV was such a terrible thing to have, that for 5 years we turned it off and everybody didn't see it. It wasn't like kids programming or something. And it was the best thing because I said, read a book, go outside and play,
Mhm.
action. Don't sit back and watch something I wouldn't give you bad food. Why would I give you a bad thought? Paul's here. Hey,
Hey,
Don, happy International Women's Day to you wonderful women around the world. Well, that's great. There isn't enough celebration. There isn't enough recognition for any group or individual in this world. There should be more. There should be, it's not where you're going, it's where have you come from? Where are you?
Mhm.
If the next step is always the only step, then you just dishonored everything and everybody that got you to your step. And eventually you're not going to take another step. And you might even flip a step or two.
Mhm.
Why not be a winner from the get go and win even more as you add to it and look at yourself as a continuum? I mean, there's a saying, you come into the world with nothing, the worst you can do is break even, right?
Right. Right.
So speak to that, Anne.
Well, so you with Paul's comment, and then you mentioned some things about like women around the world. Something that really helped me with my like we all have different biases, and I think we have experiences that allow us to um hit them face on or choose to ignore them still. Um I was so fortunate. I was doing some work in Zimbabwe, and it brought the concept, the tendency of a deficit view. That's one of the tendencies that I focus on in the equity consciousness work that I do. And it brought the deficit view to the forefront for me and just like smashed it, because I was working with women who literally didn't have a roof over their head. They didn't have a roof over their head. They didn't know when they had their last meal or when they would have their next. And they brought such joy and such love. They would hug me, and I could feel their passion for life. I could feel their desires for change. And boy, did it like rock my world in that, like, sometimes you go on a mission trip with this belief that you're going to like save this little part of the world that you're going to. And anybody who's been on a mission trip or gotten to do work internationally, you learn very quickly the gift that it is to get to tuck into someone else's culture and experience life through their lens. And I was a changed person. I was an absolutely changed person. It helped me to I definitely walked away feeling like I took more. I was there to do some teaching and educating, and I think I took more. I definitely contributed, but I took more away, and it changed me as the woman that I am today is very different in how I look at things because of that experience. And had that first woman not come up and asked if she could hug me and done so, I might not, it might have taken me a little longer. Who knows? But something within her spirit, her ability to touch other people's lives with so little, it just taught me that lesson of like how much do we need. In America, we tend to be very great consumers, of more than what we need. And they really taught me the importance of our souls and how we're being fed and feeding others. And you said something about the televisions too, Don. I was raised, Lake Huron was my backyard, and the TV was unplugged all summer long. And we maybe caught a glimpse of something my parents were watching on the evening news or something when my dad would have it on during the school year. But we were outside until it was dark. That was the rule. We didn't have a lot of neighbors. We lived out on a point, but we did have a family of 5 that lived next door to us. And then there were some other kids on the other end of the point. And as long as we were in by dark, or they knew whose yard we were at, it was fair game. You were out and about. So you learned life a lot differently than if you're a child in front of a TV and that receptive language, because you had to learn your problem solving skills. You had to learn your resiliency. I mean, so much. Just playing hide and seek or playing kick the can, or being out on the water, all of the safety things and critical thinking skills that were necessary when a storm would come in. And it, I look back on it very fondly because it helped me to be strong. It helped me to think things through, and be very open-minded to possibilities. And had I been sitting in front of a TV, which is very receptive, that would have been a different story for me, right? Like it just, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it was a whole different world because growing up, the only reason you'd stay home is if you were sick. And I was never sick. The first thing I would do is I grab my baseball mitt, and go to the field, and there'd always be 15, 16 people, and you'd choose sides and you'd play all kinds of different games. And I'd only come home for dinner long enough to eat and get out again. It'd be like, hurry up, eat, come back here and meet us again.
yeah.
And that's when, I was 5, 6 years old. I was walking 3, 4 blocks to school on my own. I mean, so to your point, you touch the pavement, you feel the grass,
Mhm.
you're tactile instead of sitting in a couch with a tablet frozen to a screen that's not realistic, that gives you a poor grasp of reality. So
Right.
technology is a double-edged sword. And what's missing more than anything else is a lot of the old school relationship building, baking a cake and taking it to your neighbor and enjoying it together. I mean, those things are now just order from Amazon, just let it come to you. and people are getting out of balance because they're not experiencing life directly or with other people directly. It's like, give me a message, send me a text. I mean, it's almost like just give me what you want and let's not even have a conversation. So I think
Right.
shows like this, and this is only going to continue to accelerate as AI continues to increase, as people are not growing as fast as technology is taking advantage of them, and it's almost like you have to have restraint. You almost have to say it like food. There's a point where I got to stop eating today, right?
Right.
There's a point I got to get off of this screen because it's making me part of it. But let me recognize some people. Ann Bimbola is here every day, every day. Hi, everyone. She's from Nigeria. She's a lovely lady. And you know what it shows is a thirst for learning, relating, and there are no boundaries, especially with the message we have. It translates into every language and culture. Uh, I know that Linda's always here too, and she can talk from being a great grandmother. So that's even one more pride and honor. And morning, yes, things have changed, but photos as child and 50 weren't as today, but cherish them today as much as time with children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
Having internet has given me opportunity to stay connected with them. And I'll finish the sentence, even though it's not on the screen. Uh, it's a long one. Um, okay, where do I start? I got to give you credit. That's a lot of typing. Um, okay, gained when married, even as divorced, but I never met one grandmother who was nursed to have relationship and then affected my mom. She was raised more by dad and brothers, so my mom developed to know how work is to be done. She became a mom, started growing, became the compassion woman to be more for her family. I am blessed to not have left, as doctors said, so struggles create issues with children, and I'm closer to some grandchildren. Seeing them now grow up in life makes me proud to see the good people I'm happy to have in my life. I have children close, have been a blessing, and love seeing their strength in handling what life throws in our path. And we didn't have this great opportunity to share and celebrate this. And Women's International Day with a couple exclamation points. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that is so cool, Linda, for writing so much,
Yeah.
sharing so much.
Thank you, Linda. Well,
And
and
go
she's
ahead.
right. The pictures are different, but if you think about the quantity of technology has grown insurmountable now, right? Um, and but also if you look across the generations, the way we interact, it's been able to be a help as much as a hindrance, right? Because like when my daughter and her husband moved to North Carolina, um, I wouldn't have had as much contact with them if it was 50 years ago, right? Technology allows me to FaceTime with them, or and also the increase in transportation in our country, to be able to just hop on a plane and be there in 2 hours versus having to do a drive that's 11 hours long. Um, you have choices now. You have choices now, so you can use it to bring you together, um, and you can use it to like have a presence. It's how are we leading our legacies? How are we ensuring that what is important to us, what we're advocating, what our call to actions are communicated and have a presence in those who are following us so that we can ensure that the work continues. Um, because we don't know what's going to be next. We never knew we would be at this point. So it's exciting. It's scary, but it's exciting, and it allows us to really look at the value that everyone brings, and set boundaries for ourselves, and live a healthy life. The technology will always be there. My daughter sometimes calls multiple times a day. I might not hear from my son for multiple days, but we're still equally close because that's what each of them need. And it doesn't mean, we have always had these conversations in our family when all of the generations get together. And it's like, who do you love the most? That's because that one's your favorite, or that's because this or that. And I think it's a great place to be in where you can honestly say you love people for different reasons.
Hmm.
And the love that you receive from them is different. And it helps form you and make you who you are and how you interact and spread that love elsewhere too. And I do realize not everyone has that kind of love from a family unit. And I'm so impressed with people who are able to develop that in their own, and define it in their own ways too. Because it's an important part of um, feeding our souls so that we can feed others. And everybody has different levels and capacities that they need. And I always appreciate the resilience of how people go about getting that when they don't have it in their first circle of influence. So it's really interesting. We went last night to a Tampa Bay Lightning game. It was a real treat. I wasn't expecting it. I met my niece and her girls for lunch, and she has a friend who has a box, no less, at the arena. And he asked her if she wanted the tickets for that night. So we took the girls, soon to be 6 and 5, to the hockey game. And what an incredible experience to to enjoy the game through their lens and be able to have conversations with them about just the sport itself and the arena itself and the evening itself. And I was really, I was really taken back by the generosity of people. It was the Pride Night. And so they were focusing people in the community. Like, I was like, how could that not be more fitting for me? For them to be focusing on all of the great work in Tampa Bay area that was doing diversity and inclusion work. And it was so interesting to see all the work that people are doing and living their passion out loud, and to be highlighted in such a public way for that. And then it was also really great. Where we were was right behind the players' families of the home team.
Hmm.
And each of those women um, have different charities and work that they focus on. And so it opened the conversation with the girls about, yes, the sport and what was happening, but also about the responsibility that these athletes and the community were taking on and caring for each other. Um and that's a great conversation to have with a almost 5 and almost 6-year-old, right? Because you don't get the response that you necessarily think you would hear. Um they get We get back very like open questions and curiosities about, well, why is that even a problem? Why is it even necessary to have that charity or that work? Because in their point in time in their life right now, they they don't see diversity as some people take it into a negative thing. They don't see an issue of inclusion until they come across someone who has a visible disability and are able to um, be curious and have a conversation with that person, and for that person to be open and willing to do that. Um, and then it was also a great experience, speaking about like growing up women, just hearing the conversations that they would have with each other. And then, kids will argue, kids will like not get along, and the littlest one said sorry to the older one, and the older one was like, no, you're not, that kind of.
Hmm.
And for the mom to step in to say, not to scold the older one, but to say to the younger one, you know in your heart that when you say sorry, that it means something. So don't let anyone
Hmm.
take that from you. You don't have to keep telling her you're sorry, you're sorry, you're sorry. You apologize for the mistake you made. So be proud of yourself and know the strong person you are. And I was just like, wow, where was she when I was growing up? You know, like those are words that I could use on a pretty regular basis.
Absolutely. And, you know, by creating experiential opportunities that are unfamiliar but worthwhile, stimulate that type of response versus same old every day. And the other element that's so important, and I think it's visible, is for things to change, it has to go peer to peer. It has to go from hockey games to conversations like this, where we don't need a centralized system to dictate or to wait on. You know, we talk about mental health and access to it, and quality of care, and all the issues in the system,
Yeah.
versus having people that are right in front of you every day, like a program like that really pre-qualifies who comes here. I mean, it's interesting. Paul made a comment. Uh, Believe it or not, Don, not only am I the minority age because Paul's pretty young, wise in all my community, I'm also in the minority as a male. I joke the manliest thing I've done was to go to a retreat and just support and listen to a group of women, my favorite people. And you know, I think that's another thing is people can't be uh, put in a compartment,
Hmm.
right? It's really how you act that determines who you are and what group you belong to.
Hmm.
You know, right? Because people
Hmm.
should be able to go whatever direction they want, qualify them as a supporter instead of being excluded themselves. How inclusive can a group be that excludes other groups from them?
Yeah.
You know, so it's really walking the walk and not just talking the talk. And people are free to be free. And you know, with my kids and my grandkids, early on, you tend to respond the way you were responded to as a kid, right?
Hmm.
And two examples would be, well, he's your favorite, you love him more. And I would finally come up with, I love you both as much as I can love anything, as
Hmm.
much. You got it all. But I love you differently because you're different,
Hmm.
right? And that's all there is. So it's not someone's favorite or not. It's whatever, you know, you become their need, you will become what's servicing that need.
Yeah.
And so I think the other element too that's so important is people have to know everybody is almost identical to themselves when you get below the surface,
Mm.
right? Everybody has the same feelings, I mean, or has feelings.
Right.
Everybody has thoughts. Everybody has background. And the other key thing I want to address is you're right. I've been very fortunate to have people in my life that were nurturing, supportive, altruistic towards everybody around them but themselves, would be the first to serve, the last to get served. You're right. Until you're a parent, do you know what a parent had to go through that you took for granted as a kid, that somehow food would just show up on a table, the
Mhm.
work around the house would just get done? So I think that's something that's kind of sobering, but
Mhm.
also honoring. And I think that's so important. And the third thing is, a lot of people who didn't have a great mother, or maybe didn't have a mother at all, or a grandmother, finds mothers and grandmothers in their life. I know my wife has a girlfriend since they were 5, and her mother was just like her mother. It was a mother to her, and vice versa. So,
Yeah.
like you say, there was another home. You felt like, hey, I was welcome here. I'm respected here. You know, I'm provided for here. And people take an interest because you can never have too many kids around you, I think. Right. And the more kids, the more laughter, hopefully, the more fun. And it becomes, you get to be a kid again. I remember when my daughter was like 3 or 4, and I remember taking her to these little places where they have a merry-go-round or ladybugs. And I'd say, if I was just a man standing here on a merry-go-round by myself with all these kids around, I just wouldn't feel comfortable. But they give you an excuse to be a kid again, right? Because I'm with her, I can be doing what she's doing, whether it's miniature golf or something else. And, you know, when you respect kids for who they are, and you wish you were them in a way,
Mm.
right? You know, because now, like you say, they're so innocent, they're so fresh, they're so, where did they come up with this? How did they know enough to say this? You know, I remember my grandson, he went to a really cool preschool, and it was like, I remember walking with him, and there was like a bug, and he said, called me Pops. He said, Pops, whatever you do, don't step on we're going to interrupt the circle of life here, you know? And I said, Jonathan, I mean, Leo, again, mixed up. So anyways, that's so cool. Let me get some more comments in here. I
Mhm.
took my kids to Boys and Girls Club yesterday. He said, what will we do there? I said, play, make a friend, put the phones and games down. And
Mhm.
you know, as a kid, I didn't have to be told to leave. I wanted to leave. There was the most boring place in the world was staying in that house with nothing going on, and plus, you know, everybody worked around the house. You know, my grandmother never sat down. I
Yeah.
mean, she was washing, cooking, cleaning, and everything had to be just right. You
Mhm.
know, but she was a model for someone who just started and never finished, you know, and kept helping people. And those are the models that you really love to have. Can say being with children from other countries has been interesting. As a young man in college from Jordan before internet, was sitting on steps at Lincoln. We were talking and said to feel his home was looking up in the sky. Uh,
Mm.
and sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and you should never presume you know something about somebody else until you've had a conversation with them. You
Right.
know, you can
Absolutely.
categorize and you can generalize if you just have to do that.
Yeah.
But you deprive yourself of the opportunity to learn fresh instead of, oh, now my ideas has changed. Where could you have been if you started without having to change an idea and build on something new, then correct something that was deficient? And again, it's doing for others when
Mhm.
you can, while you're waiting for something maybe to happen to you. But by doing something for others, you're making something happen for you through them and
Mhm.
with them, you know. And I always feel, if you got the energy, plug into someone who can use it right now or needs it, you
Oh,
know.
absolutely. And you know, and that's cross generations. That doesn't matter what gender you are. We have a responsibility to one another as human beings. Um and it's a big responsibility. You know, we're talking about children. The conversation in the car on the way home was about dreams. And it wasn't you love me more than you love my sister. It was like, how cool is it, mom, that you dreamt for a girl? Your dream was to have a girl with curly hair and to have a girl with straight hair, and you got both. And the conversation wasn't like, you love me more because I have curly hair, or you love my sister more because she has straight hair. It was like, isn't it great that your dreams came true? And then the little one started with, um, I had a dream that came true, you know, and it's the way that it changes not just that conversation, but how those girls now go into their schools and into their friends and community and interact with them in a different way. And it is very much to embrace and recognize everyone and the uniqueness of what we bring, regardless of our generation, our gender, um, our are tags that people want to marginalize us with rather than see as beautiful and what make us a great part of this society. There was this fantastic play that I went to just a couple months back. I love going to live theater because I love the interpretation of different things. And um, is it Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss? They're like 25, 26 years old, okay? Um, they created this play called Six, and it's about Henry VIII's wives, his six wives. And it took the competitiveness and took what we knew in history of their story and gave interpretation of their backstories. And there's a point in the play where one of the queens, I think it was Catherine, said, okay, wait a minute, stop, stop. Why are we breaking each other down? Why can we not see that we each have value and lead with that, is essentially what she was saying. And it was incredible, to have that have such a presence, and very different play. It was all done through current music. And for us to have that takeaway, that great lesson of, we don't have to tear someone else down in order to be seen. We have, each one of us have so much different diversity, like, that we bring to the table. We have our uniquenesses that we need that. And that's one of the things in my video for this morning for International Women's Day that I brought up, that women do bring to the table. And it is that recognizing the importance of the differences of everyone and bringing that together is a real value added. And if we were talking about specifically like men today, or I can give you statistics about roles that men have played as well, in no way am I sharing that information to put down men. It's just because we're talking about International Women's Day and giving that attention there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you really bring a lot of great stories that have really important messages to them, and can stimulate someone's thought or create opportunities that were maybe very close to being activated, which may be taken off the shelf now. Mario's here. We always love Mario's insight. We as parents should devote time and attention to letting kids create a vivid imagination, set wonderful dreams, and see good in all life around. That an early age would be a great part of the foundation of how happy they will choose to be when growing. And even the definition of what's a kid, what's an adult, right? What's a grandparent, what's a grandchild? They can swap. In this day and age, we talk about the negativity of technology, but one of the positivities about it is access, is availability. There's people who don't have the mobility, don't have the financial wherewithal to go to a certain school, but now can learn online from that school. Mm-hmm. Now can communicate, now can stay relevant. And at the end of the day, because everybody's waiting for your last soundbite, you're only as good as your next message, whoever you are. And if what comes out of you is relevant and important, you can continue to live on. And so it doesn't matter how old you are, where you're from. It doesn't matter, because it's all about value given, value received, value perceived, and value continued. But here's the thing: it will always be superficial unless people connect and commit. Mm-hmm. It'll always be do-si-do, like a square dance where you're always passing people around instead of deciding, hey, let's get to work here on something important to us. I mean, everybody has a piece someone's looking for, and the other person could have a piece you're looking for, and it costs nothing for either one because they already paid for it. It's like going to somebody's house and, can I borrow a vice grip, right? To help you with an issue. Here's Paul. Thank you, Mario. Supporting people doesn't hinder your success, only enhances it. Me. Well, here's the point. Like we talk about modeling for kids or anybody, you're modeling for yourself. You're creating trends for yourself. Mm-hmm. If you want to be a destroyer, there's nothing wrong with being a disruptor if it takes down something that doesn't work and gives the opportunity to build a foundation for something that can. We should all be builders. We should all be building. We shouldn't just be grabbing, taking. It seems like it's a ridiculous exercise, and those are the active people who are dedicating their life for something that's not worthy of their life. Mm-hmm. Whether that's a relationship, whether that's a position. Anytime you just feel worse for being around somebody or involved in something, you don't need any more of a signal to tell you you're in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing. Now, it doesn't mean you just leave that day, but know where you are and
Hmm.
start making plans to leave that place for a better place. I mean, how long would you sit in a house if the roof kept leaking on you? Right? You wouldn't just say, well, I'll get an umbrella, I'll get some buckets, I'll make this work. And you can. But why? Is that what life is? Ann's here. I'm going to have a call with Ann. We connect through comments.
Great.
I agree with you. Never look down on anyone unless we're lifting them up.
Hmm.
People should feel proud of what they do. There's a saying, leave the log pile bigger than you found it every day.
Hmm.
Right? And when you go to sleep at night, did you really? Everybody, I go out of my way. It takes work when I take my walks to greet everybody with the biggest smile, the best good morning I can. And sometimes I see people just purposely looking at their shoes,
Hmm.
just so they won't even have to see me or what I say, but that's okay because
Hmm.
I'm doing it because I want to do it, not because I'm waiting for someone to say thanks for doing it.
Yeah.
Here, another one. Is that the same one? Maybe not. Um, okay. Yeah, I mean, this has been great. We're up to about 56. We try to end by the top of the hour. I will say this is about the fastest hour on LinkedIn, because it moves so smoothly and it's so relevant and timely because there's always another story. There's always another thought. If we were just a curriculum, that's like, okay, we're going to learn the 5 points of something.
Hmm.
How interesting would that be? Because some people would already know them. Some people wouldn't care to know them. Versus people have a voice, people have a presence. It's their responsibility as well as ours to make it seen, make it heard, make
Hmm.
people get the full benefit because most of the time they're taking a poll of the worst or smallest sample around them that will not reflect who they really are and may change who they are to be what people define who they are. And I think that's so important is a couple takeaways. Don't make your past define your future,
Okay.
right? Whatever you've done has gotten you to here. Whatever you suffered for has gotten you to here. You paid prices. Now, what do you want to be? You don't have to be yesterday. And you can always go back to yesterday if you feel like it's the best thing to do. Another thing is love yourself,
Yeah.
right? Really take time to look at yourself and look at things about you that, when you can start laughing, when you start thinking about yourself or what you're doing or what just happened to you, there's a point where you realize, wow, that's reality. And then at a point where you can, if you can, how ridiculous was that? Or
Hmm.
how dumb could anything be like that? And you laugh at it because it's almost like putting a band-aid on a cut. To your point, acknowledge, take responsibility, take accountability, and commute your sentence as fast as you can and get back in the game versus I'm going to give myself 30 days here of all this negative stuff or whatever. And another thing is a friend, a group can give you a little push. You're taking yourself too seriously, you're reading too much into it, whatever it is. Bola says, so many things I took for granted while growing up, but when I left the house and became independent, I got to cherish and appreciate all my mom did for us without us having an input. Paul says supporting people does okay. This has been great. It's been
Yeah.
great having you on and sharing all of your uh, stories, people, situations. I know you packed a lot into this. And, it was great that you were able to share so much about what you think through so many people that you
Hmm.
think so much about. You know,
Hmm.
finding that makes it, more expansive, more, enjoyable because people, love people's stories. It's
Right.
like, tell me about yourself and what made you who you are or where you're going or what you're doing. And that's so cool. So Anne, closing up, what final thoughts would you like to leave?
Well, I was just thinking about how, like, every day I look at it as like, how am I helping those in my sphere of influence be seen? Really know that I see them and that they have value, because we all have value. You know, we all have the light and the dark. I've said that before. You can't have darkness without light. You can't have light without darkness. And it makes us who we are. So it's then what do we do with it? And having conversations like this, and affirming for some people and challenging some people, to maybe step into that next area that they wanted to in their life but hadn't had the confidence to do because they're letting something that's happened in the past be a barrier to it. I think it's so important for people to be seen, and that's what I wake up every day and I'm like, and then I do a check-in with myself at the end of the day as well. Like, how did I help people feel seen? And how do I help people recognize their value? You know, like, we all have it. And my focus is on diversity and inclusion. My focus is on giving a voice to those who are marginalized, and we can marginalize ourselves. So
Mhm.
it is like really like getting out of that mind talk. If I can just encourage people to get out of that mind talk and take a step into one area, something that you're on the cusp of, and you're in danger of letting it go. And that would be a shame for the rest of us, because we wouldn't get to see that side of you, get to be a part of that portion of your story. Um, I think coming in around each other and just recognizing those that are in our sphere of influence, and letting them know that they've got this, whatever it is, that's huge. I think that's huge. And I would hope that anyone would reach out to you, Don, or to me, or to each other and say, "Hey, this is what I'm working on. What do you think about this or that? Or I just can't get past this or that." That's what I do a lot of times when I'm coaching adults. Um, is it helps for them to not take on your story or what you think they should do, but to allow them to see it through different ways so that they can affirm, where their path is leading them, and they can have more ownership of ownership of that. Uh, you know, we have this incredible capacity as human beings to really bring each other up, and I love being able to be a part of that and support people in doing that.
Well, that's wonderful. And I would advocate reaching out to myself or Ann or whoever if you want to learn a little bit more about things we talked about. But here's a direction you could take. I know my LinkedIn profile, Ann's LinkedIn profile. She has all of the stuff she's published, all the articles. You can start looking at that on your own, right? You don't need a conversation initially to learn more about us, to learn how we think, how we talk, how we post. And one last thing to your point, because you bring up so many quality points that you can really pivot from, is that the abundance we're talking about is already inside of you. It's not like there's a certain amount in the kitty and then everybody gets a share and you get your share. Your share is inside of you,
Mhm.
and it doesn't come at the expense of someone else or need to, and is there to activate. And so the key is again, we talk about it: reflect, take inventory, find out what serves you, support it, find out what doesn't, replace it with something that can, and you move one foot at a time. And that's the key to success, is just moving forward, blessing yourself, finding the good in everybody around you, even if it may be hard to find. And remember, if someone's difficult, they're only difficult to you when you're with them. They're
Mhm.
difficult to themselves all day long. They have to live with that fury. So feel sorry for them in a good way, maybe. So with that, we got Dan here. Okay, just want to finish up. Great morning, beautiful people. Happy Wednesday. Uh, Dan's here. Hi, hi. Good morning. Good morning. And with that, I want to say goodbye. Everybody rest up for 23 hours and come back. Tomorrow is Kelly and
Yeah.
Friday is Christy. You don't want to miss it. And, you know, it's so cool. We can just work from a wonderful session like this into another session tomorrow.
Mhm.
And I can't thank everybody enough for sharing and learning together and participating, because that's what makes it worth doing. Right? If it was just me and Ann talking, it wouldn't be enough. But when we can help people, interact with people, and more importantly, learn from you. If I'm looking to learn from my grandkids, I'm looking to learn from anybody and everybody. And I think that's the best position, because at that point, either you earn or you learn, but you never lose until you quit, because that's when you got to count it up. So with that said, thank you so much, Ann. I look forward to having you back, and thank you, and have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye for now.
Take care.